Thank you all so much, and welcome to Jonesboro and the International Storytelling Center. I love getting to do this talk here, and tonight we're going to share some stories and hopefully get a chance to do some networking as well, and then hear from some experts as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. We think of the 26th president, Theodore Roosevelt, and we immediately think of this picture, right? Him smiling, laughing, with his big glasses there. Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th president of the United States. But he was more than just our president. For those of you who don't know, he was the first president while in office to ride in an airplane, to ride in a car, to travel to a foreign country while in office. Not only that, he was the founder and creator of the U.S. Forest Service, created over 150 national parks. He was the governor of New York, the head of the New York City Police Chief Board. He was an assistant secretary of the Navy, vice president, governor of New York. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. He was a driven man, but he loved taking a team of people with him. And when we think about Theodore Roosevelt, most of the time we don't think about this. We think about this guy, right? The guy with the cool hat who was the Rough Rider. We all think about that iconic moment, even in movies. Like if you look at, Night at the Museum, how do they portray Theodore Roosevelt? Dressed up as this guy with the Rough Rider hat, right? Well, why was that? Well, he created a culture around this image of the stereotypical of what it was like to be a man at the turn of the century. So in the late 1800s, for those of you who don't know, this was a time of huge change, just like this last millennium was here in the United States. And Theodore Roosevelt found a way to surround himself with the right kind of people and create a culture that got things done. The Rough Riders were one of those. For those of you, this is kind of interesting. He created the first United States civil cavalry. Now, this was an armed group of citizens that wanted to join the war effort. So in the late 1800s, the Spanish-American War started. It all started from the sinking of a ship, the USS Maine, blew up in Havana, Cuba, and everybody was up in arms and they wanted to go to war, and Theodore Roosevelt was right with them. So what did he do? He was Assistant Secretary of the Navy at the time. He resigned, became a citizen, and got all of his buddies from the frontier days to join up. They bought all their own outfits, their own rifles, their own horses. They commandeered a Navy ship, and they sailed to Cuba, all under the guise of fighting the war effort. So Theodore Roosevelt created this amazing culture out of people that, were a part of his previous life. And he said, we're going to go do this thing together. So tonight I want to talk about culture and how did he create that culture? What are some of the ways that we can, as business owners or leaders or people on a team, use some of these tips and tricks and tools to talk about culture? Well, first of all, I like definitions. Let's define things. So I love this quote about what is culture? It's the outlook, attitudes, values, morals, goals, and customs shared by a society. That can be a team, it can be a company, it can be any group of people can have this outlook as culture. And I love the words in here, and we're going to break it down a little bit more, because if this is what culture is, well then there must be, some more to that. Well, I love this quote from Brian Chesky. He says, culture is 1,000 things 1,000 times. And you think about that, break that down. It's all the little pieces and parts that go into how people answer the phone, how they greet you when you walk in the door, what they wear, what kind of music they listen to, what they eat. All of that is part of the culture of a team, of a group of people that comes together. So if we have culture, there must be a secret recipe, right? Everybody likes the secret, right? 3 quick tips to losing those abs, or I guess gaining them in my department. But what is the secret recipe for creating a company culture? Well, I think I broke it down a little bit here, and I want to see if this pans out. I love food as a metaphor for life. We can use food to talk about a lot of other different things, and I want to do that tonight by talking about this secret recipe. So I believe you have to have a chef, you have to have some ingredients, and you've got to have heat, and you've got to have time in order to create culture. These are the different things that I believe create a culture. Now, it could be good, could be bad, could be great, it could be ugly. But let's kind of break this down a little bit. So a chef is the leader, right? The ingredients are the people. The heat is the passion or vision. Why are they doing this? And the time is the trust that's built as you create this culture over time. So let's take the example of Theodore Roosevelt, the Rough Riders, right? We had Theodore Roosevelt, this amazing leader, a man who had done many things in his life, and he's like, I want to change the world. Well, he did that in a lot of different ways. But in this instance, what happened is this passion, this vision, this heat came from the Spanish-American War. They blew up the USS Maine. He was mad. They actually had a battle cry, "Remember the Maine," that they yelled as they were riding up the hills in Cuba. So the Spanish-American War was the heat, the passion, but who were the people, the ingredients he brought together? Well, in his previous life, in the frontier days, he had sheriffs and business people and former soldiers, miners, Native Americans, even people that he helped arrest, he convinced to come be a part of the Rough Riders and go fight this battle. And that is what we look at when we look at the Rough Riders. They also had time and trust. What's interesting is they were this group of individuals that were kind of thrown together at the last minute, but they went to Texas and actually trained for several weeks. Theodore Roosevelt got a bunch of people together and was like, all right, we're going to teach you how to shoot, how to ride. We're going to teach you how to cook out on the battlefield, how to march, all of these things. He taught them, and it took that time for them to come together as a group. One little interesting side note, I love history, as you all know. And the USS Maine, when it blew up, they actually salvaged the ship. They pulled it up. And they took the metal from the ship and they melted it down into all of these plaques for the Daniel Boone Trail. So you can actually walk out the door right now and across the street. I encourage you to do this when you leave. And there's a monument that looks like this. And there's a metal plaque in the middle of it that is made from the USS Maine. They melted it down and made all these Daniel Boone historical markers. There's also one in downtown Johnson City, right in front of Muncie Church. So you can see both of those and see a little piece of history. The passion that inflamed Theodore Roosevelt lives on today in a physical piece. So the Rough Riders, this is the example of how we use this recipe to come up with a culture that did amazing things. What does a culture look like in modern times? So we have the good, the bad, the ugly, and the great. Well, let's start with the good. We were just in Charleston, South Carolina this week, and we were walking down the street right by the market, and there was a lady, I'm going to say Veronica. She seems like she was a Veronica. And she's standing there, she's like, hey, how are y'all doing? Come in here, have a piece of candy, free on me. And of course, suckered us right in, right? We all walked in and got a free piece of pralines, and she's handing them out, and she's like, honey, she looks at Shannon, and she's like, if you go back there and give Carl a hard time, I think it's his anniversary or something, go give him a hard time, I'll give you a free box of pralines. And of course, Shannon's up to the challenge. She's like, well, yeah, sure. So she goes back, gives Carl a hard time, happy anniversary. And Veronica yells from the front, you got a box of pralines. And of course, what do? We buy another box. We get some more fudge. We have fun. We're laughing and talking and joking with everybody in there. And we walk out of the street, and I was like, what just happened? We just wound up spending like $20 on fudge, and we walked out and we're like, we had a great time. That was awesome. Well, what was it that created that magical moment? Well, it goes back to the purpose, back to the culture that River Street Sweets created. A really interesting story. This company started in Savannah, so if you've ever been in downtown Savannah, right on the Riverwalk there, they started back in the 70s, a family company, and they said, our purpose is to provide this good old-fashioned hospitality. And that's what we experienced in that moment. And so not only did we have a good time, we also wind up spending money and helping them grow their business because we loved that good old-fashioned hospitality. Now, what happened there was they were empowered to have fun. Their job was to connect with the customers. This didn't happen on accident. They just didn't randomly stumble onto Veronica and put her into that place. It was there on purpose. They spent time, money, creating that position, helping weed through the different people that would be a right fit or not right fit for their culture, and created the experience so that Veronica felt comfortable to give away free product, to connect with customers, and to create a good old-fashioned hospitality moment for us. So good culture, it can empower a team to do excellent work. And we've all seen that. We've all seen a good culture. What about a bad culture? I don't know if you've been keeping up with the news lately, but WeWork is a name that's been in the news a lot recently. They started out about 7 years ago, a company that provided co-working. And they started out very small and said, this is what we want to do, and wound up becoming a global phenomenon. They have offices on all the continents. This company wound up being valued at about $40 billion. And they leased office space and created these, beautiful but very overpriced places around the country and around the globe. At one time in London, they said that anything above the third floor in downtown London, 70% of that office space was controlled by WeWork. They were leasing out whole floors to Facebook, and they were riding the train, man. They had very charismatic CEO. Newman had gone to all these different investment bankers and had raised millions and millions and millions of dollars and said, we're going to change the world. We're doing amazing things. Wound up rebranding WeWork as We Companies and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go out and change the world. Well, it started kind of crumbling around him because it turns out he was doing some shady behind-the-scenes financial dealings and leasing things out back to himself. And he wound up leasing or selling the branding for WeWork to the company for $1 million that he then paid himself by selling the brand We to his company. Then it turns out we start to see all these things come out when they filed for the IPO. They said, all right, we're going to file an IPO. And they said, well, you're valued at $40 billion. And the market was kind of like, I don't know, man, a real estate company that's only been around a few years. And so they started digging a little bit, and they started hearing all these stories come out from the employees. And a few years ago, they had a major layoff, and at an all-hands meeting in the company, the CEO stood up and said, all right, we're going to fire 7% of our workforce. And then said, you know what? We need to celebrate that we're leaner and stronger and ready to go. And he brought in tequila shots for everybody. And then the MC from Run DMC came up on stage and started singing It's Tricky. This happened in an all-hands meeting for WeWork. And you start to look at story after story, and guess what? Well, now they've rescinded their IPO. It dropped 40% before it even went to market. The CEO had to step down. They've now replaced the CEO. All of this comes back to the culture of the company, of the little pieces and parts that built up to make who they were, and it all came crumbling down. A bad culture can demotivate your team and cause issues. And we all see that. We see a company that, has this amazing thing, and then it just all falls apart. And we're like, why did that happen? And everybody's like, well, this or that. Most of the time, it comes back to culture. All right, an ugly company. Oh, let's talk about Boeing. Boeing has been in the news lately, too. I read an amazing article in the New Republic that went through both of the crashes that happened recently in the last 2 years, and they traced it all the way back to the culture of the company. Now, Boeing has been around since 1912 and founded by engineers, built on safety. They went through a whole process in the 70s where they said, you know what? We're a family company. They actually used the word family for Boeing. Well, what happened? Well, just like big companies do, downsizing, they started merging, acquisitions, etc. So McDonnell and Douglas, two other airplane companies that were both floundering, they joined together and merged. Then McDonnell Douglas got bought out by Boeing. Then the former CEO of McDonnell Douglas wound up taking over the company because the former CEO had multiple issues pulled against him. And then that new CEO says, you know what? We're getting rid of the word family. This was in 1999. They said, family is no longer a word we're going to use. We're going to use team. And they no longer started promoting engineers, and they no longer used safety as a workplace word. It was, how do we cut costs? And all of that culture trickle down now leads to, in the last 2 years, within 5 months, there were 2 plane crashes. And 200 people lost their lives in the first plane crash, and I think it was over 200 in the second one. And you trace that back, and it's all the way back to the culture of how they do what they do and why they do what they do. That CEO, by the way, stepped down, is no longer gone. He was having an affair with somebody in the company and some financial shady dealings, and he's no longer the CEO of Boeing. So you look at the culture issues that happen, and you're like, why does that happen? Well, it goes back to culture. An ugly culture will cause major problems internally and externally. People lost their lives because of a culture issue. So let's talk about great. I love great companies, and I know Zappos gets a lot of play in the press about how great a company they are. Well, it's because they're a great company. They do amazing things. If you've ever looked at them, Tony Hsieh, who's now the CEO, leads this really cool company that sells shoes online. When you say that, it sounds really boring, doesn't it? It's like, oh, they have a website that sells shoes. Well, it's not about what they do. It's about how they do it. This is the 10 values that Zappos has. And I don't want to go through all of them, but I do want to focus on the two bottom and the left. Build a positive team and family spirit, and build open and honest relationships with communication. So Tony Hsieh and Zappos said, we're going to build this culture of a positive team and open and honest relationships. So how do they do that? Well, they do that through the hiring process. So they will pay you to go. Now, what that means is when you get hired on at Zappos, which is an extensive process, some take 6 months to get hired on, they will pay you $1,000 to quit. And it is literally built into the contract when you sign up to work with Zappos. They're like, here's $1,000 if you want to leave, go now. Why do they do that? Well, they want the right people on the team. They want people that are going to be open and honest. They want people that are going to build that personal trust with somebody else. And if somebody comes into that company and they are like, ooh, this is not a good fit, I don't feel right, they want to incentivize them to leave so that they're not a part of that, so that they can build a team that's all in on themselves. A great culture can empower a team to do the impossible. Here's what's impossible is a shoe company selling shoes online that wound up getting bought by Amazon for $1.2 billion with a B, has over 1,500 employees, and has somehow managed to, even though being acquired by Amazon, maintain their culture. They've done an amazing job of keeping those 10 values, even while being owned by a company that some people may not agree with their workflow and their culture. Zappos has done a great job of that. So I had an interesting conversation with my daughter the other day in the car. I asked her, I said, what does a good company culture look like? And she said, well, Dad, there has to be some kind of intrinsic motivation for people to do their job. People who work for just money, fame, or power won't last. Which, by the way, she's 16 now, but that happened just a month ago, a little less than a month ago. And I was like, what are you doing? Sophia's not in the room, so I can say this. I was like, where did you learn? What is this? She's like, we were talking about this in our psychology class at Science Hill. And she said, the value of what you do for a company is not based purely off what you make. And if it is, then eventually you're going to become unhappy. 70% of people are unfulfilled in their work right now. According to a Gallup research poll, 70% of people are unfulfilled. So if we know the good, the bad, the ugly, the great, what can we do, right? We look at all these stories of companies. So what are some things that we can actually do, whether we're a leader ourselves or whether we're in a team? Well, here's a couple things you can do. One is the taste test. Let's go back to our secret recipe. When you want to find out if something is good, what do? You taste it, right? You go, is this right? Does it need a little less of this? Does it need a little more of that? And I think a lot of times as leaders, as owners, as people who are a part of a team, we're so focused on moving ahead that we don't stop and take time to test. What is it that is going on in our groups? So here's a couple things you can do. First off, Net Promoter Score, NPS. So if you've ever gotten an email from Delta, or a lot of other companies use this, and they ask the really simple question, how likely are you to recommend this service, product, et cetera, to somebody else? And it's a scale of 1 to 10. 1, I'm not going to recommend it. 10, I'm going to super recommend it. So one question, you answer that question, and it provides an NPS, a Net Promoter Score. This is a great way in one question to measure, are people willing to recommend you? Especially internally. A lot of companies are using this internally to say to their employees, how willing are you to recommend this company for somebody else to come work here? Secret shopper. I love the idea of sending somebody in to a company and totally blind, they don't know, and they're just there to check out the experience and see what it's like. Read reviews. I love doing this. I'll go on to Yelp or Google or whatever, and I'll read a review. And if it's not a good one, I'll send it to my friend, especially if it's somebody who owns the business or who is a part of that business. I'm like, dude, you got to deal with this. You got to respond. And when you get those reviews, you put up the wall, right? You're like, well, that was no, just read the reviews, listen to the customer, and then reply on there in the public format. And you'll look at companies that do that, and you're like, oh, okay. Even if it's something where it wasn't their fault, whatever, when somebody replies in an online conversation, it makes it better. Ask for that honest feedback and then just listen. A lot of times we ask for feedback and then we shut down and we're like, well, I don't really want to hear what you have to say. So listen to that. And finally, benchmark with history. So if we go back to Boeing and we look back at the original founder and say, what did he do, or what was the values that he had in place when he launched? So go back to the beginning and find out what is it that started this, and can we get back to that? Always be hiring. A buddy of mine has a file folder in his office, and he's always looking for people that are the right fit. So if you've kind of selected, here's the people that I know that I want to work on my team, and you're always asking for resumes. Somebody's like, hey, I'm looking for a job. Give me your resume. Yep. We want to see if you're a good fit. I love the No Asshole Rule. It's a great book. Go read it. But it's also a great piece of culture. A lot of times companies are like, man, this person is so awesome. We need them on our sales team. They're kind of a jerk, but they get results. Run away. Please do not hire the asshole. It will only hurt your company culture and alienate everybody else. So don't hire that asshole. Sorry, Olivia. But it's true. The secret sauce. How many of you are NBA fans? Anybody? Basketball? I like that. Good. So the secret sauce for one of these coaches is amazing. I couldn't believe this. I read his story. This is a coach with 5 NBA championships, 22 winning seasons. He's the longest active tenured coach in any sport. It's Greg Popovich with the San Antonio Spurs. And you go back and you read about his life and you look at, why has this guy been so successful time and time and time again? And I found an interesting article on ESPN where they uncovered his secret sauce. And it was all about dinner. He takes his entire team and staff out to dinner all the time. When they're on the road, when they're at home, when they win, when they lose, he's like, let's get together and go have dinner right now. And around the dinner table, things happen. It's amazing to me that the people that eat together are the ones that perform well together. And they actually did a study. The Harvard Business Review found that they had over 500 firefighters, these different firehouses around the country, that they went in and they did a whole survey with them, and they said, do you guys eat at the same table together? And they found that the teams that ate together, as opposed to eating alone, outperformed the others by 40% on a wide variety of metrics. People who eat together win together. And Greg Popovich is proof of that. And he spends so much time around the dinner table coaching, talking to people, bringing them together. One of the folks with his team said, I have never, and is an NBA journeyman that's played with a bunch of other teams, he said, I've never been on a team where I knew everybody as well as I did on the Spurs. And it was because they hung out together and they enjoyed time together. Mission statements. All right, let's read this together. And let's see if you can guess who the company is. Blank provides its customers quality office and information technology products, furniture, printing values, and the expertise required for making informed buying decisions. We provide our products and services with a dedication to the highest degree of integrity and quality of customer satisfaction, developing long-term professional relationships, are you guys still awake, with employees that develop pride, creating a stable working environment and company spirit. Any guesses who this company is? Office Max, good guess, but no. Staples, no. The answer is Dunder Mifflin. Yes, this is their real mission statement. A group of writers around a table at NBC said, what can we do to create a mission statement for Dunder Mifflin? And this is what they came up with. Now, here's the deal, all right? Yeah, this is fine. for a jokey kind of laughy atmosphere for a TV show, but is that really what we want to pin our mission on, our purpose, our defining goal of who we are as a company? So I am going all in on battle cries instead of mission statements. Now, mission statements are fine, don't get me wrong, and I know some of you have just recently gone through this process and have come up with kind of new mission statements. It's a good exercise to go through, and it helps create a fundamental document for who you are as a business. But when you're in the heat of the moment, can you remember your entire mission statement? Right now, think about it in your head. Can you quote your mission statement word for word? Probably not. And here's why. We go back to Rough Riders, charging up the hill with guns firing down on us, all the adrenaline pumping. When they're in the heat of the moment, we forget that big, long paragraph. But what we don't forget is remember the Maine. We don't forget Geronimo. We don't forget remember the Alamo. We don't forget O-H. Thank you very much, my Ohio people. There is something about a battle cry it's ingrained in your head. You can't not say it when you're in the heat of the moment and when everybody's around you and you're all like, yes, we can do this together. So I've come up with my patented battle cry maker, 5,000. And this is something you should yell when you have a trebuchet and you're tossing VW bugs. It should be 5 words or less. And it can be distilled down from your mission statement, but like mine is add flavor. You guys know that, right? I say it all the time. And it is mine, to my core. I want to add flavor by bringing cool stuff to the world. That's who I am. And so you can do it. The second is the yell test. It's really hard to yell out, paper products for the world, et cetera, and bring pride and passion. You just can't yell that out. You'll run out of breath. So you got to be able to yell it. Distill that down. Take all those words and phrases and things that you think are adding value when they're really not. They're just there to make it look like a good sentence. But inside there's probably a good phrase. The t-shirt test. Does it go well on a t-shirt, right? Those words are too small to read when it's 3 paragraphs long. The trebuchet test. Does it feel good when you launch something off a trebuchet going, add flavor? For me, it did. So it's got to be memorable and it's got to have that deep meaning. Like, for instance, I knew this ahead of time. When I planned this talk and I wrote it out, I said, when I say OH, there are people from Ohio in here, they're going to say IO. Like they can't not say it. It's ingrained in their mind. So your battle cry for your company, for your team should be something that sticks in the brain, that when you're in the heat of the moment, as a team, you're going through the tough stuff, you can say that to each other to help remember why we do what we do. Finally, change. Can one person change a culture? I think they can. And I'm going to tell you a little story why that I think they can. So this was a couple years ago in downtown Johnson City. My family all ride bikes, and of course there's a big bike race during the festival. And my kids are like, Dad, we want to go do the kids' bike race. And I'm like, all right, great, get your bikes, we'll come down. This is going to be a wonderful thing, and we're going to have a good time with it. My youngest, Olivia, at that time, was on the training wheels. Now, this bike race is part of an omnium where they have professional bike riders from all over the world that come into downtown Johnson City. And these guys are there to make money. Like, this is part of their livelihood. So they're there to win and race. Well, the kids' race is the last race of the day right before the big race. And, of course, all the kids get lined up out there, and they're all on their bikes. And then I start looking, and I'm like, wait a minute. These kids have, like, the spandex outfits on and the helmets, and, like, they're, like, aerodynamic. And I'm looking at this going, these kids are, like, professional athletes. And my poor little child with the training wheels is the only one on a bike with training wheels. So I'm like, oh, no. What have I done? I've got Sophia, the oldest. She's not on training wheels. She's going to be fine. But Olivia, is she going to be able to make it in the race? So, of course, they fire the gun. Everybody takes off. And instantly, they all leave her in the dust. And my wife looks at me. She's like, Jose, will you go run alongside her and make sure she gets through? And I'm like, yes, I got this. Dad moment, I'm in. So I'm running alongside of her. And she's over there, squeaky, 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 going on a little bike with the training wheels. And we go around the first corner. And there's all the guys out on the course getting ready for the next big race. These guys have legs the size of tree trunks. And like, I'm just worried about Olivia's safety, mainly because they're out there whizzing around, warming up. And so this one guy comes around the corner, and I'm thinking, okay, just pass on by and just, Olivia, keep going. You're doing great. Don't freak out. You know, I know you're maybe upset with everybody leaving you the dust, but just keep going. And the guy, instead of passing on by, falls right in behind Olivia on his bike. And I'm like, oh no. I was like, have I angered these guys? Are they upset that she's on the course because they're ready for the big race? Is she going to get upset and start crying? What am I going to do? And I'm just running alongside. I'm like, come on, Olivia, you can do it. Let's go. Hustle it up a little bit. And at that moment, we pass by a table with a group of our friends out there. And they look over and they go, Olivia, you can do it. And I saw the guy look at Olivia when they said that. And he kind of stayed right there. I was like, Olivia, you could do it. Come on, let's go. Hustle it up. So we're about halfway through the course at this point. And then I look over, and there's some more riders coming by. And I'm like, guys, just please pass on by. We're really trying to finish this race. And we don't know if we're going to make it. And please, just come on. Go on by. I know you got a big race to go. And the second guy, instead of passing her by, falls in line right behind Olivia as well. Now, there's two big guys right behind Olivia. I'm trying not to freak out. I'm like, Olivia, come on, we got to do this. And we round the corner to come up the street. And there's a little bit of a hill there. And training wheels with the hill, I'm like, how are these guys even standing still on their bikes and riding, keeping balance? Olivia is now standing up on her bike, riding like this. And I'm yelling and screaming, come on. Now another 2 or 3 riders come up behind. And now there's like 5 guys right behind Olivia. And I'm cheering them on. And another table of our friends over there look and they go, Olivia, you can do it. And then the guy right behind Olivia leans down and goes, Olivia, you can do it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy's encouraging my daughter. I'm like, yeah, you can do it. And we get up to the turn, getting ready to come back down to the start-finish line. And as we're getting ready to do that, at this point, the kids' race is over. It's been over for 5 minutes. They've crowned the winner, and the race captain is looking for all the riders. Hey, guys, where are you? We need to start the race. And my wife is going, where is Jose and Olivia? What is the deal? Has he thrown her off the course? I'm getting frustrated. And at that moment, we round the corner onto State of Franklin with the entire peloton behind Olivia cheering her on to the start-finish line. The guy on the microphone's like, and it's Jose Castillo coming down to the start-finish line. Olivia thought she won the race. The crowd went wild. It was an amazing moment. And the entire group of riders are cheering her on all the way to the start-finish line. She thought she won the race. Of course, she gets off. She's happy, whatever, etc. And I look at the guys, and I'm like, that one guy that could have just raced on by, instead respected her being on the course, stayed behind her, and then wound up cheering her on. And then wound up getting the whole group to cheer her on. And that turned into the crowd cheering her on. So one person taking the time to show respect to somebody and to say, you can do it, changed the whole course of the outcome of that race. So when somebody says, can one person change culture? I say, yes, they can. All they have to do is find one other person and encourage them. Say, you can do it. So, the next time you're looking at what is the secret recipe for our culture, the team that we're in, where are we at? Look to the leaders. Who's leading? Who's the chef? Who started this? Look to the ingredients. Who are the people that are part of it? Do we have all the right ingredients? Do we need a little less, a little more? Do we have the right one at the right time? Heat, you got to go through pressure. You got to have a passion. You got to have something driving you other than just money. It's got to be something else. Why did you start to do this? And finally, it takes time. Sometimes you just need to be patient. You need to realize that you're going to have to go through things together as a group in order to create a great culture. Thank you all so much for your time, and I look forward to talking more about culture in just a few minutes.